Hello and welcome to That's Odd TV. I'm Nadia Giordana and my partner in crime is Lynn Garthwaite. Hey Lynn.
Good morning. Hi, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I think we're going to be talking mostly about old movies, a visit we made to a world premiere in Minneapolis recently, a very unusual one. In fact, let's talk about that first, and then we'll see how that plays into some of the other things we're talking about today.
It was called The Demon with the Atomic Brain, so that'll set the stage right there. So it was a fun premiere.
It was fun, and to make a long story short, the director, producer, Christopher Mihm, used to enjoy old movies with his father, and as an homage to his father, he started making films. So he makes brand new, black and white, but reminiscent of the old, kitschy, cheesy movies like you see on, what's that, 3000, Movie Theater 3000?
Oh, MST3K.
Mystery Theater 3000.
Yep, the old B-movie type things.
Yep, they're like that. So we saw Demon with the Atomic Brain.
Right.
Had a blast.
Yeah.
I dressed up as much as I thought a Minnesota girl thinks a movie producer would look like.
There you go, yeah. And they had some of the monsters at the premiere making an appearance in person.
They did, and we were able to take some pictures and enjoy that premiere and taking people back to old movies without watching a genuine old movie. These are brand new films that he's making.
Right.
And what that tells me is people still love old movies.
Absolutely, and they love those old B kitschy movies, the kind of low budget, creepy, oddball things that they become classics.
And I think the low budget part is one of the best parts of it, because you look for the mistakes, you look for the, oh, look, I can see how they did that.
Exactly, you can see a human leg sticking out of a costume, that kind of thing, Yeah,
and you can tell that the backdrop, in fact, in Demon with the Atomic Brain, you can tell that part of that movie is filmed in his basement.
Right.
They've got backdrops and things, but you can tell that everybody pitched in and they made, it was a darn good, fun movie for what it is. It exactly is what it is, and totally enjoyable in that sense. So we had fun with that.
And very imaginative. The storyline was imaginative. It was a lot of fun.
But, as kids, we used to watch old movies all the time.
Right.
And all different genres. Film noir was something that I liked, which I guess what I picture when I think of film noir is a silhouette of a man smoking a cigarette in front of Venetian blinds.
Okay, gotcha.
A door opens, it's light on the other side, you see the silhouette of someone, and the foreground room is dark, but it's those stark contrasts in black and white that make for the fun in the
And the darkness
visual.
was important in all of the old monster movies, because what you couldn't see was more frightening than what you could, because what you could see in those low-budget movies was usually pretty silly. The creature from the Black Lagoon comes to mind, things like that, but what you couldn't see was more frightening. So, and that's probably part of the interest in the zombie movies too, because so much of it was dark and darkness of night and that kind of thing.
Always happened at night.
Yep.
The phone lines were cut, or for some reason you don't have communication with the outside world.
Exactly.
I don't know how they make I don't watch today's horror, scary movies, so I don't know how they work out this lack of connection, like with cell phones and things like that. But in the days of regular telephones, they were isolated.
That's true, and you're always out in the country somewhere, always out on a farm, where nobody's around, whatever. And I did look up something about zombies. The background of it is it did start in Haitian lore. So it goes way back. But at that time, the idea was that they could revive somebody from the dead, but then that dead person would be under their spell and at their command. That was kind of the idea of those original zombies. And that's kind of how it started out here too, although the modern zombie movies they seem to have a mind of their own. I mean, they're not under anybody's command, I'd say.
Well, the part I like about modern zombies is that they're still slow, like
Right.
those zombies.
You can outrun them.
I figure I can outrun
And if you look at the old zombie movies, they didn't have the elaborate makeup sort of thing, the blood dripping things. They were much more they just looked like somebody who had been laid to rest and then got up and started walking. So that's a big difference.
Which was easier to do with black and white film.
True.
You know, that was a lot easier to do with that.
Just kind of have a dead look in their eyes and a facial expression, and that would be enough.
And you know that that original movie, what was that called, Night of the Living Dead? That movie is in the public domain these days, and a little bit later we'll talk about why that is. But I didn't know that before.
So anybody can take pictures of it or from it and use them and stuff. So.
Yeah.
To get a little look at that movie, Night of the Living Dead, we've got a clip for you. Stay tuned.
They're coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now.
He'll hear you.
Here he comes now. I'm getting out of here.
Johnny. Oh, no!
All radio and TV stations.
That was a fun movie. One of those classics that just never gets old. People will watch it 20 times and enjoy it every time. Good movie.
I know, I did too, and I had not seen it in its entirety during my lifetime until recently, and we were talking about this subject.
Yeah, same here.
And one of the things I noticed is the very beginning of the movie, same as I was talking earlier about film noir, the contrast and the darks and lights, the pastoral country scene when the couple is driving up the road. Of course, there's a cemetery, you gotta have that.
But it's a pleasant day.
Oh, it was
green
beautiful.
grass.
Yeah. And they go there to set up, and the excitement starts fairly quickly in the movie, and I liked that because it goes right to someone walking through the cemetery, and it looks like an ordinary person at first. Of course, you know it's not.
It's from a distance, right.
Yeah. And so they, you know, that just was a wonderful way. It's actually a well done movie, didn't you think?
Yeah, considering how long ago it was made, that was pretty well done.
1930s. I should have memorized the date before today, but it was way back in the 1930s.
Very well done. Good shots and things. So,
Yeah, they had a good time with that. And another thing that happens and is used in old movies is crystal balls.
That's a staple.
Yeah, crystal balls, fortune tellers.
We happen to have one.
Yeah, and we happen to have one. I've had this since the 1980s.
Wow. Have you divined anything interesting from it?
Well, there is a story to that. When I got this as a gift in the 1980s, I was exploring some different New Age avenues and exploring self and all those things that go with it. And I took a class in scrying. And doesn't that seem like an awkward word? It doesn't seem to fit.
It sounds like a made-up word.
It sounds like a made-up word, but apparently scrying is the technique, if you will, that they use to divine information out of a crystal ball.
I'm not seeing anything.
I remember some things about the class. The woman who did the class, she told me you had to commune with the crystal ball. She said you meditate, and then you form a bridge. You imagine and picture this bridge between you and the ball.
Okay.
And then you travel.
Become one with the ball.
Become one with the ball. And you travel, your brain, your psyche travels into the ball. You look deep inside, and eventually, because she said you have to become friends with the crystal ball before you can use it. Well, I tried that, and I tried it, and I tried, and I tried, and not a diddly darn thing ever came
What a
out
shock.
of it.
I'm shocked.
I never saw anything there, and what I really wanted was to see what you'd see in the old movies.
Oh,
Was
a scene would appear
A scene
out of the
would
dust.
appear. I wanted nothing less than that.
Sure.
A scene had
One
to
can
appear.
hope.
Yes, I didn't want to make it up in my mind.
Yep.
Because it was supposed to be real, and nothing quite ever happened or came out of that. Did you ever have a fortune teller tell your fortune like that?
No, but I did look up some information on crystal balls, and I understand it started with the early Druids, actually. And it was all that Mother Earth kind of thing, the nature. It was crystal, it came from Earth, and therefore it could divine information, I think. So it goes back a long way. People have been depending on things like that for a long time.
I'll be darned. I knew nothing about that part of the history. If the teacher told me that way back, that was too many years ago for me to remember it.
Well,
now.
and now we see what they call gazing balls that show up in gardens, and it's garden
they're
art.
nice.
So
They're
it's
nice.
kind of transformed in the 21st century
Yeah.
into something else. Although somewhere people are using them still as
I'll bet you they
original.
use some of those for this purpose too, because they're highly reflective, and you could still do some of the things on there.
And we did visit a place called the House of Balls. Nadia will mention that in a minute. But one of the segues to that is this is an artist who takes bowling balls, among many other pieces, and he carves them. He actually digs into the inner sides of bowling balls, carves them, and creates faces. And they're extraordinary. They're absolutely incredible. And I thought, this is the case where you gaze at the ball and it gazes right back at you. So.
I think so too. And we'll use this as a transition to look at a clip from what is one of the littlest known, most unusual museums in Minneapolis, and it's called the House of Balls.
And welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that tour of the House of Balls. That was fascinating. You have to check that out. Also talking about more filmmaking with monsters, it occurred to me that Mary Shelley, who wrote the Frankenstein movie or book in 1818, she was really an early trendsetter on zombie type things. Yeah. Even though she didn't refer to Frankenstein as a zombie, he was kind of that undead, bringing back from the dead. And so, she was very much way ahead of her time. Now in the 21st century, when we talk about zombies, it's usually a zombie crawl, where you're looking for a frothy beer instead of a brain. But we have changed times, haven't we?
It has changed an awful lot. So, and I have an interesting did you know about the Night of the Living Dead movie. One of the reasons we can have it here and use a clip on this show. We could even show the entire movie if we wanted to.
Right.
I wouldn't want to do that. But the reason that we can is because it's in the public domain. And the reason it's in the public domain is because of copyright laws back in the 1900s and early decades thereof until, I don't know exactly what year the copyright laws changed.
Right.
Nowadays, simply creating the work of art, the film, the poem, the book, and you own the copyright. You don't have to prove it and you don't have to register it. But in those days, you had to put the copyright mark on the credits of the movie, on the first screen that they saw when you start your movie.
Okay.
Well, Night of the Living Dead began with a different title. And they decided that that title wasn't quite right. At the last minute, because that original title was similar to some other movie that had just come out. So they changed it to Night of the Living Dead. Whoever did the graphics forgot to put the copyright mark on. That literally took away their copyright rights, and it was in the public domain from day one.
Wow.
So I'm sure someone lost their job over that one.
Could be. That would be a crusher. Yep.
But isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And how one simple little mistake can change the world.
One little
kind
mistake.
of.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, well, I was interested in B movies just in general. The kind of the low budget type movies, and I learned that they were often used in double features back in the 40s, 50s, that kind of timeline. And they were low budget on purpose because they were just meant to be kind of a filler to get things started. And they became so popular because they were so entertaining in an odd way that it became kind of a classic thing all of its own. But there are a few modern day actors who got their start in these kind of B movies, going back a ways. John Wayne and Jack Nicholson both got their start in B movies.
I saw an early Jack Nicholson in a super old movie.
Yeah,
Oh,
he was just
funny.
practically a kid.
Yeah,
and for
he
John
was.
Wayne, it was westerns, and westerns were often these B movies because they were pretty low budget. But even modern day, Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt got their start in these B movies, so they're pretty popular.
Little Shop of Horrors, that's the one Jack Nicholson was in.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite movies of all time.
And that's become a classic.
Yeah,
and that's the interesting thing about some of these low budget ones is they became classics. You didn't have to put $20 million into a movie to have it become
They're
well known.
entertaining, and that's the whole point.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's something that you might not know. Sean Connery had a job as a coffin polisher.
A coffin polisher. Okay.
Is there such a job? I guess there is in funeral homes.
He did take a step up when he moved into acting.
He did.
Yeah, but of course that's a leap of faith when you go into a job like acting.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen. You don't have any idea of your future. So
no idea.
He left that really solid job,
polishing
coffins.
He'd have a job forever doing that. He could still be doing that today if he would have wanted to.
That's true. He probably wouldn't have married the beautiful models that he's married over the years, but. I looked up some B movies because there's hundreds of them really, and I came across a couple that I thought were particularly interesting. And the point of when you pitch a movie, if you're the writer or just you have a product, you pitch it and somebody's got to green light it. Somebody's got to say yes, this sounds good enough that I'll put some money in this to make. And so when you look back on some of the movies that got green-lighted, I think this is hysterical. And even movies like Sharknado and The Blob, which are classics.
Sharknadoes.
I know they're classics.
Hilarious.
But who listened to that concept and said, this sounds like a winner?
No, I would have given it thumbs down if I actually saw the script.
Absolutely. And there are multiple sequels to that. The Blob was remade. So, but I found two that I think are hysterical. One is called Deathbed, the Bed That Eats. And it's all about a bed that when you lie down in it, whatever lies in it gets eaten up. This is the concept.
Funny.
And at one point, the bed gets indigestion, and luckily, somebody leaves a bottle of Pepto-Bismol on it, and everything's fine. I mean, somebody green-lighted that project.
I don't know who that would be.
And the fact that it's not a classic maybe gives you an idea that it didn't turn out too well.
I'm going to look that one up.
But my favorite was one called Basket Case, where a guy carries around in a wicker basket his deformed, separated Siamese twin, which is little more than a part of a torso and a head and one arm.
Goodness.
And oddly enough, that torso, head, and arm happen to be evil.
Of course.
And he carries it around in a wicker basket, and somehow the two of them do crazy evil deeds. That got green-lighted too.
I never heard of that
I
one
hadn't heard of
either.
it either before I started looking him up. So there's been some interesting ideas over the years.
Some funny, interesting things that people did. And here's something I noticed was that the first movie ever given the term blockbuster was Jaws.
Oh, interesting.
We didn't have the term blockbuster before that.
And interesting that it was a horror movie that became a blockbuster. You know, you'd think it'd be the Gone with the Wind sort of drama, whatever, but cool. All right.
I didn't
know that.
When I went to see Jaws, I didn't know it was a horror movie. That was a bad experience for me.
You didn't know what to expect.
No, I didn't know what to expect.
That was bad, yeah.
And Norman Bates' hobby in Psycho was stuffing birds.
So the character's hobby
character.
was to stuff. Oh, that makes sense because they're all over.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and he stuffed his mother too. So
In the
just
end,
gave that away.
Gave the ending away.
So zombie movies, horror movies, B movies have been with us forever, and we love them.
Yeah. Well, we're going to change gears now for just a moment before we go any farther. And we do cooking clips on the show from time to time. It's always something a little bit more unusual.
Right.
Do you like oatmeal, Lynn?
Not a particular fan,
Not that
no.
much.
If
Do
it
you-
has some of the like cinnamon sugar or something, yeah.
Yeah, that always enhances it. Do you like coffee?
I have coffee with cake. I'm not a morning coffee drinker, but
okay.
I like the coffee with the cake sort of thing.
Well, our recipe today is oatmeal, instant, well, it's not instant oatmeal, you don't use instant oatmeal in the recipe, but it's a non-cooked, because you mix up the oatmeal and you put it in the refrigerator overnight, but the liquid is coffee.
Interesting.
Coffee with milk in it.
Okay.
So we're gonna take a look at that, and I actually tell you, it is good.
Oh, good to know.
It is good, and I would recommend that people try it.
I
So
can't wait.
let's look
Can't
at
wait to
that
see it.
clip.
All right. That looked great.
Yeah, that was fun. It is good, and I recommend that people try it. It's a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
So, well, and I was thinking, you know, we're getting close to the end of the show and it's time to wrap things up, but I wanted to mention, and I don't know what your opinion about this is, Lynn, but I really do think that that whole zombie thing, it's everywhere. It shows up in clips on different programs. There's a new series out, which I haven't seen. I think the whole thing is overdone, and I wonder what your opinion about that is, Lynn.
I don't know, but I think it's contagious.
What? Oh no! What was in that oatmeal?
I don't know, we don't get out of bed looking like this.
Yeah, you're right. We just don't get out of bed looking like this every morning.